You're lying in bed. Everything is quiet. Your breathing is steady. And then, without warning, your heart does something strange. It skips. There's a pause, a fraction of a second where it feels like your heart simply stopped. A gap in the rhythm you've trusted your entire life. And then, right after that silence, a beat lands hard, harder than normal. A thud against the inside of your chest that makes your breath catch. And in that moment, everything in your body tightens. Your mind races. You press your hand to your chest. You wait. You listen. You think, was that dangerous? Is something wrong with me? Is my heart failing? That fear is immediate. It doesn't wait for logic. It doesn't care that you were perfectly fine 2 seconds ago. It floods your entire awareness with a single primal concern: survival. Because nothing gets your attention quite like the organ responsible for keeping you alive suddenly doing something you didn't expect. And you're not alone in this. Millions of people around the world experience this exact sensation, some of them daily, some of them only once in a while, some of them during periods of high stress or exhaustion, and almost every single one of them reacts the same way, with fear, with hypervigilance, with a quiet, lingering worry that maybe something is seriously wrong. Some people check their pulse obsessively afterward. Some lie still, afraid to move, monitoring every beat. Some start searching online at 2 in the morning, reading about cardiac arrhythmias and heart disease, and suddenly convincing themselves they're in danger. The spiral is fast, and it feels incredibly real. But here's what most people never stop to ask. Not because they don't care, but because the fear is too loud to think clearly through. Why does the heart suddenly misfire like that? Why does it skip, pause, and then slam back into rhythm when nothing seems wrong? When you're not exercising, not panicking, not doing anything that should put stress on your cardiovascular system? What actually causes that moment? And more importantly, what does it mean? Because here's the truth that most people don't hear soon enough. That moment, the skip, the pause, the heavy beat, it feels alarming. It feels like a malfunction. But in the vast majority of cases, it's not what people think it is. It is not a sign that your heart is breaking down. It is not a warning of something catastrophic. And understanding what it actually is changes everything about how you experience it. So let's slow down. Let's look at what's really happening inside your chest during that moment. And let's start with the science, because the science is far more reassuring than the fear. Your heart beats roughly 100,000 times every single day. Think about that number for a moment. 100,000 contractions, 100,000 electrical signals fired in precise sequence, keeping blood flowing through every vessel and capillary in your body. It does this without your conscious input. It does it while you sleep, while you eat, while you argue, while you daydream. It never takes a break. It never asks for permission. And the system that drives this rhythm is electrical. Deep within your heart sits a small cluster of cells called the sinoatrial node, sometimes called the natural pacemaker of the heart. This node generates electrical impulses at regular intervals, and those impulses travel through the heart muscle in a very specific pattern. First, the upper chambers contract, pushing blood downward into the lower chambers. Then the lower chambers contract, sending blood out to the lungs and the rest of the body. This happens in sequence, over and over, with remarkable consistency. But sometimes, and this is the key, an electrical signal fires early, not from the sinoatrial node, but from somewhere else in the heart. A different group of cells generates a premature impulse, jumping ahead of the established rhythm, and this creates what's known medically as a premature contraction. There are 2 main types. When the early signal comes from the upper chambers of the heart, it's called a premature atrial contraction, or PAC. When it comes from the lower chambers, it's called a premature ventricular contraction, or PVC. Both are incredibly common. Both are, in the vast majority of cases, completely benign. Cardiologists encounter these every single day in clinical practice, and in patients with structurally normal hearts, they almost never require any treatment at all. Now here's what actually creates the sensation people describe as a skipped beat. The premature contraction happens slightly before the heart has fully filled with blood, so the beat itself is weaker than normal, sometimes so weak that you don't even feel it. What you do feel is the pause that follows, because after that premature beat, the heart resets its rhythm. It waits slightly longer before the next contraction to get back in sync, and during that pause, the heart fills with more blood than usual. So when the next beat finally arrives, it's stronger, more forceful. That's the thud. That's the drop. That's the beat that makes you press your hand to your chest and hold your breath. So the heart didn't actually skip. It fired early, paused to reset, and then delivered a stronger beat to compensate. It's not a failure, it's a correction. The system working exactly as it should when a minor irregularity occurs. And this happens to nearly everyone. Studies have shown that when people wear continuous heart monitors for extended periods, 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes even longer, the vast majority of them show premature beats. People who feel perfectly healthy, people with no heart disease, no symptoms, no complaints whatsoever. Their hearts still produce occasional early beats. It's simply part of the normal variability of a biological system that runs continuously, without rest, for an entire human lifetime. Now, what triggers these premature beats? The list is surprisingly ordinary. Caffeine is one of the most common culprits, not because caffeine is dangerous to the heart, but because it stimulates the nervous system, which in turn can increase the excitability of those cardiac cells. They become slightly more sensitive, slightly more likely to fire on their own before the sinoatrial node gives the signal. Stress is another major trigger. When you're under psychological stress, your body releases cortisol and adrenaline, hormones designed to prepare you for action. These hormones affect heart rhythm directly. They increase heart rate, they alter the way electrical signals propagate through the heart muscle, and they can make premature beats significantly more likely to occur. Fatigue plays a significant role as well. When the body is exhausted, its regulatory systems don't operate with the same precision. Sleep deprivation in particular has been shown to affect cardiovascular rhythm in measurable ways. So has dehydration. When fluid levels drop, blood volume decreases, and the heart has to work harder to maintain adequate circulation, which can produce rhythm irregularities. Even digestion can be a trigger. The vagus nerve, which runs from the brain down through the chest and into the abdomen, directly influences heart rate and rhythm. When the stomach is full, or when there's gas pressing upward against the diaphragm, vagal stimulation can cause the heart to briefly shift its pattern. Many people notice premature beats after large meals for exactly this reason. Alcohol is another common contributor that often goes unrecognized. Even moderate amounts can affect the electrical stability of cardiac cells, making premature beats more frequent in the hours after drinking. Hormonal fluctuations, particularly during menstrual cycles or periods of hormonal change, can also play a measurable role in heart rhythm variability. So when you look at the full picture, what you see is not a heart in danger. You see a heart that's responsive, a heart that reacts to the body's internal state, to what you've consumed, how you've slept, what you're feeling, how hydrated you are. These premature beats are not signs of disease. They are signs of sensitivity. And for most healthy people, they are entirely normal, entirely common, and entirely safe. Now, there's a deeper layer to this that most explanations never reach, and it has to do with the relationship between your heart and your nervous system, a connection far more intricate and far more influential than most people ever realize. Your heart doesn't operate in isolation. It's wired directly into the autonomic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that runs without your conscious control. This system has two primary branches: the sympathetic branch, which accelerates things, heart rate, breathing, alertness, muscular readiness, and the parasympathetic branch, which slows things down, promoting rest, digestion, tissue repair, and calm. These two branches are in constant dialogue with each other, perpetually adjusting your heart rhythm based on what the body requires at any given moment. When you stand up quickly from a chair, the sympathetic system kicks in to keep blood flowing to your brain. When you sit down to eat a meal, the parasympathetic system takes over to support digestion. When you hear a sudden loud noise, the sympathetic system spikes your heart rate before you even consciously register what the sound was. This happens seamlessly, thousands of times every day, without you ever being aware of it. But sometimes the transition between these two states isn't perfectly smooth. Sometimes there's a microsurge, a brief spike of sympathetic activity, a sudden burst of adrenaline that comes and goes in a fraction of a second. And that microsurge can trigger a premature beat, not because anything is wrong, but because the nervous system momentarily shifted gears faster than the heart could smoothly follow. This is why premature beats so often happen during transitions. When you're falling asleep, your nervous system is shifting from sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic dominance. That handoff isn't always seamless. A small spike of adrenaline during the transition can cause the heart to fire an early beat, and suddenly you're wide awake, hand pressed to your chest, wondering what just happened and whether you're safe. The same thing can happen during moments of emotional transition. You're having a calm conversation and something catches you off guard. A memory surfaces, a realization lands, a flash of anxiety you weren't expecting passes through you. Your nervous system responds instantly. Adrenaline releases, heart rhythm shifts, and you feel it as a skip, a flutter, a momentary lurch in your chest. There's also a phenomenon that many people don't know about. Your heart actually contains its own intrinsic nervous system, sometimes called the cardiac brain. It houses roughly 40,000 neurons that process information semi-independently. This network communicates with the brain through the vagus nerve and spinal cord pathways, creating a continuous feedback loop that's constantly being refined and adjusted. Your heart isn't just passively receiving instructions from above, it's actively participating in a conversation, sending signals back about its own state and responding to shifts in your overall physiology. What all of this means is that your heart is not simply responding to physical triggers, it's responding to your internal emotional landscape. It reflects your psychological state with extraordinary sensitivity. A moment of worry, a flash of frustration, a wave of sadness, a burst of unexpected excitement, all of these can register in your heart rhythm. Not because the heart is emotional in the way we poetically imagine, but because the nervous system treats emotional signals with the same physiological urgency it treats physical ones. And this is important to understand, because it means that when you feel a premature beat during a moment of stress or emotional intensity, it's not a coincidence, it's a direct physiological response. Your body is processing something, your nervous system is adjusting, and your heart, which is among the most responsive organs in the entire body, is reflecting that adjustment in real time. This doesn't mean your heart is fragile, it means your heart is connected, deeply, intricately connected to the full scope of your experience. And that connection, once you truly understand it, stops being frightening and starts being genuinely fascinating. Now let's talk about why this sensation feels so much more dramatic than it actually is. Because the physical event, the premature beat, the pause, the compensatory thud, is genuinely minor. It lasts less than a second. It involves a single heartbeat arriving slightly out of order. In the grand scheme of 100,000 daily beats, it is negligible. But it doesn't feel negligible. It feels enormous, and there's a clear reason for that. Your brain is constantly monitoring your internal environment. Most of the time, this monitoring happens entirely below conscious awareness. You don't notice every heartbeat, every breath, every small digestive movement. Your brain filters out the routine. It only brings sensations to your conscious attention when something changes, when something deviates from the expected pattern. A premature beat is exactly that kind of deviation. It breaks the rhythm, and the moment it does, your brain flags it. Attention snaps to the chest. Suddenly, you're acutely aware of something you normally never notice, the beating of your own heart. And once your attention locks onto it, the sensation intensifies. Not because the physical event is getting worse, but because your awareness is amplifying it. This is a well-documented phenomenon in neuroscience. sometimes described as interoceptive amplification. The more attention you pay to a bodily sensation, the more intense it feels. It's the same reason a small cut stops hurting when you're distracted, but throbs painfully when you stare at it. Your perception is shaped by your focus. And when your focus lands on your heart, the one organ you associate most directly with being alive, the emotional weight of that perception multiplies dramatically. So the feeling is real, the skip is real, the thud is real, but the intensity, the wave of alarm, the feeling that something terrible is happening, that is largely constructed by your attention, not by the event itself. Your brain is doing exactly what it's designed to do, alerting you to change. But in this case, the change it's alerting you to is almost always completely harmless. And once you know that, something shifts. The next time it happens, you might still notice it. You might still feel the pause, the thud, the brief flutter of concern. But beneath that reaction, there's now a layer of understanding, a quiet recognition that this is your body doing what bodies do, adjusting, correcting, responding. And that understanding, quiet as it may be, changes the entire experience from the inside out. There's another layer to this worth exploring, and it has to do with timing. Because many people report that their heart seems to skip at strangely meaningful moments, during an important thought, during a moment of deep connection with someone, during a memory that carries real emotional weight. And when that happens, it's natural to wonder, is this a sign? Is my heart trying to tell me something? Is there meaning behind this moment? This is where pattern recognition enters the picture. The human brain is extraordinarily skilled at finding patterns, even where none exist. It's one of our deepest survival mechanisms. Our ancestors needed to detect patterns in their environment to predict threats, find food, and navigate danger. The rustle in the grass might have been the wind, or it might have been a predator. The brain that assumed predator survived more often than the brain that assumed wind. And so we evolved to over-detect patterns, to find connections, to perceive meaning even when the evidence is thin.
When a premature beat happens during an unremarkable moment, while you're washing dishes or scrolling through your phone, you barely notice it. You might not even register it consciously. It comes and goes, and your attention never flags it as important. But when that very same premature beat happens during a moment of emotional significance, while you're thinking about someone you love, while you're wrestling with a decision that matters, while you're reflecting on something deeply personal, your brain connects the two events. It creates a narrative. The heart skipped because of the thought. The body reacted because of the meaning. And suddenly, a random physiological event becomes something that feels like a message. This isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's a fundamental feature of how the human mind processes experience. Your brain is a meaning-making machine, and it operates constantly, linking events to emotions, sensations to stories, timing to significance. But it's important to recognize this process for what it is. Not everything that feels significant is intentional. Not every coincidence carries a deeper message. Sometimes the timing is simply timing, two unrelated events occupying the same moment, and the meaning is something your mind constructed after the fact, because that's what minds do. They search for stories, they look for connections, they turn raw sensation into significance. That said, there are traditions and contemplative systems throughout the world that do interpret heart sensations as meaningful signals. In certain meditative practices, a sudden shift in heart rhythm is understood as an awareness cue, a moment when the body is drawing attention inward, inviting you to notice something you might otherwise overlook. Some traditions interpret it as an emotional signal, a sign that something beneath the surface of conscious awareness needs acknowledgement or processing. Others describe it as a subtle shift in internal alignment, a quiet recalibration of energy or state that briefly manifests as physical sensation in the chest. These interpretations carry their own kind of wisdom. They honor the intelligence of the body. They treat sensation not as noise to be dismissed or feared, but as information genuinely worth listening to. And there's something valuable in that perspective, the willingness to pay attention to what the body is expressing, even when the expression is subtle, even when there's no clear clinical explanation that fully satisfies the felt experience of the moment. But it's important to hold these interpretations with open hands. They are symbolic frameworks, not clinical diagnoses. They offer meaning, not mechanism. The idea of the body communicating through sensation is a beautiful and sometimes useful lens, but it remains a lens, not a proven fact. And the most grounded, most honest approach is one that honors both the science and the symbolism, without ever mistaking one for the other. So here's what I want you to carry with you. You are not in danger. Your body is not broken. What you felt, that skip, that pause, that heavy beat, was your heart doing what it has always done, responding, adjusting, recalibrating. It is a sign of sensitivity, not fragility. If you want to go deeper into calming your internal reactions and building trust in your body, I've created a free resource called The Magic of Affirmations. The link is in the description below. And the next time your heart skips a beat, ask yourself this: what do you feel first? Fear, awareness, or curiosity?